Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are undertaking a fascinating, deep dive into one of the most intense corporate restructurings we've seen in digital entertainment history. We're looking at the massive June 2026 organizational shift over at Xbox. You know, this platform used to be widely viewed as this safe haven for boundless, blank check creativity, right? But right now, it is executing a sweeping corporate reorganization. So our goal today is to look directly at the data, the memos, and the market forces to decode exactly why Microsoft is making these massive, industry-shaking moves. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this, starting with the elephant in the room. $75 billion. That is the historic amount Microsoft spent to acquire Activision Blizzard. Now, an acquisition of that size, it naturally changes the entire gravitational pull of a company. To understand the immense, really crushing pressure currently facing Xbox's smaller-scale creative studios, you have to realize that after dropping $75 billion, the corporate board's expectations shifted literally overnight. Lower profitability margins on smaller prestige projects, those were simply no longer going to be part of the ongoing strategy.
And that financial shift leads us directly to the leaked documents that surfaced in mid-June of 2026. This is basically a leaked kill list of legendary, diverse studios. We're talking about Ninja Theory, the studio behind Hellblade. We're talking about Double Fine Productions, led by Tim Schafer, who created Psychonauts, and Compulsion Games, who recently showcased South of Midnight. Right now, as we speak, these studios are engaged in desperate, emergency negotiations regarding their future within the ecosystem. They are facing potential closure, mergers, or just being sold off entirely. Section 1, the financial autopsy, and Wall Street mathematics. We're going to transition from gamer sentimentality straight into the cold, hard financial realities driving this corporate surgery. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark drop we're talking about. Look at the key performance indicators from 2024 to mid-2026. Active Game Pass subscribers only moved from 34 million to 34.5 million, meaning growth has essentially stagnated over a critical 2-year period. Meanwhile, hardware console sales went from a 15% year-over-year decline to a severe 31% drop. And perhaps most importantly, the operating profit margin plummeted from a healthy 8 to 10% down to a much lower level.
A 3% net profit margin. We really need to focus heavily on this metric right here, because a 3% margin on a massive global entertainment division triggers absolute panic. It raises immediate red flags for investors. This is the exact number that prompted Microsoft's board of directors to demand an operational pivot. Because, this kind of return is totally unsustainable in the eyes of shareholders, especially directly following a $75 billion acquisition.
Which brings us to this incredibly candid quote from Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella to explain the board's new mandate. He stated point blank, "Our entertainment division must transition into a self-sustaining business. We cannot subsidize it indefinitely." In that same earnings call, he pointed out an interesting, almost bitterly ironic reality. YouTube actually generates more revenue from people watching Xbox gameplay videos than Microsoft makes in net profit from selling those actual games. Think about that for a second. That sentence alone marked a clear, definitive turning point away from the previous era of creative spending.
Section 2, the leadership reset and the changing of the guard. Because when a corporate fleet abruptly changes course, the veteran commanders are often the first casualties.
Let's walk through this brutal chronological collapse to see how the management changes actually unfolded. In May of 2024, the industry saw the closure of studios Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks. Then, fast forward to June 8, 2026, Xbox holds this highly successful showcase highlighting games from studios that, behind the scenes, were already facing potential closure. Just a week later, on June 15th, Bloomberg exposes the confidential negotiations regarding the sale or closure of these acclaimed studios. And then, the very next day, Craig Duncan, the head of Xbox Game Studios and a 15-year Microsoft veteran, abruptly resigns.
With Duncan's departure, operational power quickly consolidated under the new gaming CEO, Asha Sharma, and her internal memo to the staff was chillingly clear about the path forward. She wrote, "We will not succeed by hiding from brutal truths, nor by repeating the same actions expecting different outcomes." She then officially outlined a comprehensive 100-day factory reset. Make no mistake, this memo officially marked the end of Phil Spencer's era of creative leniency.
Section 3, the Game Pass dilemma and the glass ceiling. Let's look at the fundamental flaws of the Netflix of gaming model and why it's no longer economically justifiable.
34.5 million subscribers. For years, Game Pass was touted as having this grand ambition to reach 100 million subscribers, but they have hit an incredibly stubborn glass ceiling. Even after integrating colossal, mainstream franchises like Call of Duty into the ecosystem, subscriber growth has totally plateaued, hovering persistently right here at this 34.5 million mark.
So the crucial point is how this stalled growth directly impacts the studios. On the pro side, sure, sustaining mid-sized, AA studios provides artistic prestige, diverse narrative experiences, and it bolsters the Xbox brand's reputation with critics. But look at the cons. They require tens of millions in annual upkeep. They lack the massive system seller momentum needed to attract millions of new subscribers. And crucially, because they are self-contained narrative games, they don't have the microtransactions or live service mechanics needed to generate sustained long-term revenue. In a subscription service that refuses to scale past 34 million, funding these bespoke experiences just no longer aligns with the overarching business model.
Section 4. Independence or Death. This is the agonizing reality for these endangered studios.
These survival scenarios create an active minefield for studios, like Ninja Theory, attempting management buyouts to escape the chopping block. First, to even survive the initial months of independence, they face an inevitable, painful downsizing of 30 to 50% of their staff. Second is the IP crisis. Established, lucrative franchises like Hellblade will almost certainly remain under Microsoft's ownership, meaning these independent studios have to build new properties completely from scratch. And third, they must immediately seek third-party funding from cash-rich publishers like Sony, Tencent, or Amazon. Leaked communications actually show employees are already being told to look for other jobs. Because if these negotiations fail, permanent closure is the only alternative.
Section 5. The New Console Reality. Let's zoom out to examine the massive paradigm shift Microsoft is undertaking regarding console exclusivity.
When we juxtapose these two strategies side by side, the shift is undeniable. The legacy Xbox strategy from the old Spencer era focused on hardware dominance, mass studio acquisitions for genre diversity, and subsidizing independent creative studios. The new 2026 Xbox strategy under current leadership, it pivots away from that model completely. They are ruthlessly transitioning into a highly profitable multi-platform software leviathan, meaning they will sell software on rival platforms like the PS5. The focus is entirely on AAA mega franchises like Call of Duty and Fallout, with a strict demand for immediate, high return on investment.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the dark paradox of how the financial market reacted. Within the game development industry, sentiment sits in extreme fear. Developer job security is literally at a decade low. Yet because Microsoft executed this agile restructuring and eliminated what the board viewed as loss-making assets, Wall Street actually rewarded them with a 1.2% stock surge. It is a striking illustration of the massive gap between the people actually creating the software and the financial architectures demanding profitability.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question to ponder based on our analysis today. Is the golden age of cheap, highly varied gaming experiences rapidly accelerating towards its end? As Microsoft transitions into a third-party software publisher focused on massive live service blockbusters, we really have to reflect on what is lost when diverse, narrative creativity is sacrificed for Silicon Valley profit margins. It's a heavy shift for the industry and absolutely one we will be watching very closely. Thank you so much for joining me to decode this complex topic. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll see you on the next explainer.